Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Amicable Divorce Network podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Moore-Grant. I'm the founder and the host of the Amicable Divorce Network. And today we are talking with Stephanie Robbins, and she is a mental health professional with Alpharetta Family Therapy in Alpharetta, Georgia. She's also our mental health chair at the Amicable Divorce Network. And last but not least, a significant contributor to our book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution. She wrote many of our mental health related topics and is personally and professionally very passionate about helping people divorce well and better. Thank you for joining me today, Stephanie.
Thank you, Tracy Ann. I'm happy to be here and excited about talking about this subject.
So this subject is one that people really enjoy learning about. We're going to be talking about the psychological stages of divorce. And this is an important topic for professionals to learn about so that they can help their clients, and also for people facing divorce so that you can understand the stages that you're going through, those feelings that you're having. You are not the only person. It happens with everybody. And so you can have some solace in that and a little bit deeper understanding. So, Stephanie, let's just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about the psychological stages of divorce. Does this impact everybody? Can they all expect to go through these stages?
Yes, the psychological stages, most people will be impacted by the emotional journey of going through the divorce. Divorce is not just a legal process. I heard once that they said it's like 90% emotional and 10% legal. I don't think a lot of people realize the emotional impact that divorce has. And once they're in the midst of it, it just can sometimes be overwhelming. Divorce, the stages are very similar to the grief stages of loss. Divorce is actually the second stressor on the scale of top stressors. It's below death of a spouse or death of a child. So it is extremely stressful.
Yeah. We try to make it a little bit better at Amicable Divorce Network, but regardless, it's still a journey. And I think what's really interesting is people may start the divorce process at a different spot in the stages. And so that's important to know as well. Somebody may have already moved through some of these and then decided to divorce, where somebody may be at the very beginning. So it's important to understand this so you can help people and understand yourself where you're at. So let's talk about the first stage. What is it?
So kind of going through if you go through the grief stages, which are not in order when people go through it, but one stage is the denial, where people are the initiator, the person that had been thinking about the divorce. They might tell their spouse that they're wanting the divorce, and so the responder who hears this might go through denial. They might not really realize that this is really happening to them. It's almost surreal. And then another grief stage that people will go through is the bargaining, where they're like, maybe I can fix this. What can I do? I can do something different. Let's go to couples therapy. I'll take the trash out more. So people are grasping at straws,
Right.
trying to keep the marriage together because that's their last ditch effort, really.
Yeah.
Then the next stage is the anger. And that's where a lot of people get really upset. They project the anger either on themselves, like, oh my gosh, they feel guilty. They may feel like they caused everything, or they project it on their spouse.
Or their divorce attorney.
Or yes, the divorce attorney.
Or their mental health professional.
Exactly. And people sometimes don't even realize they're doing that.
Yeah.
The anger is just such a frustration, almost to rage. And then I've seen clients that they almost don't think rationally in this space.
And I think something to point out here is, if you hear this and you know that you yourself are in this anger phase, or you're a professional and your client is in that phase, it is not a good time to go to mediation. Personally, as a mediator, when people are still sitting in this very angry spot, they're more interested in being difficult, in punishing the other side, of not being helpful to get the case resolved. And they're just really marinating in this anger, and it just doesn't lead to productive settlement conversations.
No, and then people get stuck or obsessed or ruminate, and they just want to talk out past history stuff, or to complain about their spouse or different things, and they really cannot focus during this stage. So professionals looking and being aware of those signs is very helpful.
And if you have a client or you yourself are just really stuck in this anger phase, I would say that if they are not in counseling, now is the time to really strongly encourage that they go get individual counseling. As a little side to these steps, as a professional, do you have any tips for how I can delicately recommend this to my client without offending them or making them feel crazy or something? What would be a good way for me to recommend some treatment?
Well, first off, you want to validate their emotions and say, I understand this is very hard for you. I'm your attorney. We have professionals that can really help walk you through going through the divorce. It's highly emotional. You need extra support, sometimes family and friends. You're not ready to tell them yet, but a therapist or a mental health professional is really somebody that can actually help listen, help you process, come up with skills and strategies. You can also say, this has helped many people that you've had in the past. You and I have collaborated on cases, and it really definitely helps with the emotional to help stabilize people so they can make those better decisions for their future.
And it helps people faster. I would say the only other thing I have seen that gets people sort of well, maybe two things that gets people unstuck from this phase. The first just being the passage of time, which if people are in treatment is actually, more focused on them and they can work through this anger, quicker than just letting a year pass or something like that, because people stay in this stage quite a long time sometimes. The other thing is a new partner. I hate to say, but they may find all of a sudden they have some hope. They found somebody else that boosts their spirits. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, and also sometimes I find when people find a new partner that their ex actually stirs up emotions with them too, because that's definitely the loss of the marriage, or they may not want their spouse, but then they see them with someone else and it's just this whole anger, resentment, all the emotions come back. Like I was talking about the different stages. You think when you're going through the divorce process, the legal process, but post-divorce, you still have these grieving stages. And sometimes people can hold their emotions together during the divorce process, but then after it almost floods them.
Yes.
Or like when when they start enacting the parenting plan and the kids are not with them for holidays, and they start getting upset, like, well, I want to be with my kid all the time, and then they realize they have to share.
Yeah. I think also the introduction of new partners, like you touched on, that ends up being very real for people. And then they get into this comparison game. Sometimes we have new partners that overstep, really interject themselves, and it can cause a whole new world of problems and cause people sort of regress in some of these stages.
Yes, and that's another time, like when you have a new partner and they're telling you these things, bugs in your ear, they're giving you information through their lens and what's going on with them. And if they had a high conflictual situation, if they were divorced, they might lead you that way. Or they might understand why you might be letting things roll off your back or not causing conflict, but it can be very stressful. So that's another time to see a therapist during those times to learn how to have the boundaries with your partner, how to communicate, what's best, and then also to really if you have kids, keep focus on the children and what's best for them.
Absolutely. So we've gotten denial, bargaining, and anger. What's next?
Next is the depression stage. This is where people will feel like lost and overwhelmed, and like the weight of everything has kind of fallen on them. This is when they start getting sad and depressed. And this happens, like I was saying, it's not linear, it's in a wave. It can just happen at any time, things can trigger it. I spoke earlier about the initiator who initiates it, and then the responder. The initiator goes through these stages too. And during the depression stage, sometimes the initiator kind of feels guilty. They start having a lot of remorse. They feel guilt. They want to, they question sometimes, like, is this really what I need to do? Am I making the right decisions? Is this going to hurt my kids? And if they continue to have this depressive sadness, then those negative thoughts continue.
Yeah. And we see this a lot at the holidays, I think, if people are used to having, their kids with them, and now this is their first Thanksgiving or, similar. Without kids, they might go back to this phase and feel quite sad.
Yes, and during the holidays with family, extended family, and them questioning and asking.
And giving their advice.
Yes, and that's another time. It's going to a therapist during those times, like what to say to the family, how to manage that. Because, I mean, holidays in general for anybody is just stressful.
Yeah.
Going through a divorce, or especially when the first year of the divorce or process is where the family, once they have good intentions, they want to be supportive, but sometimes it can be overbearing, stressful.
Yeah, and can really sometimes be an impediment to settlement because they are obviously squarely on your side. They love you and they care about you, and sometimes they're just like, you need to do it this way, and do it this way, and they suck, and fight, 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 and really they're not part of the everyday situation. They are just sort of popping in with some opinions.
And those opinions make people not divorce amicably.
Yes,
You know,
exactly. So you need to remember it's your life, it's your decision making, and you are the one alone who needs to deal with, your parenting plan and your decisions. And so, all right. So number 5.
The number 5 is the acceptance phase. Again,
All right.
you will go in and out. The acceptance phase is like, okay, it's time to move forward. This is where the true healing begins. This is when reality sets in, you start getting your routine, you start being able to focus. When you're at the acceptance phase, it's a great time to go to mediation. It's a great time to really think about what you need. And people need to understand that these are temporary feelings that can impact long-term decisions. Right. And people will have emotions where they have anger. They might fight for something that they really don't want, but they just want to win, or they want to hurt their spouse. And so people need to keep that in check, like their resentment and their anger, and really ask themselves, is this table really that important?
Yes, that's interesting. I've had many fights over tables, used desks, a weed eater, all kinds of things. And, just reflecting back on some of the earlier stages, I've found as well, if people are in the denial stage, especially like they are not really willing to engage in the negotiations and they're in front of your face, it's time to make decisions, and they are just sort of putting their head in the sand and not, there to make these big decisions. And so it's important on both sides of the table, whether you're the professional or the person approaching the divorce, to just be very candid about where you are at, where you see your client, and to get them to the space where resolution is meaningful, they can engage properly and make some good decisions. So acceptance is a good place to be to make some decisions.
For sure.
Yeah, the other ones would be difficult, and we've all seen that as professionals, people in all these other different stages, and it's sort of like walking through mud to get that settlement because you're dealing with so much emotion and not logic.
For sure, and there's some clients that are very active. A lot of times I see this with women. Once women make the decision, they're like on the ball. It's almost like a survival instinct where they just want to have everything in order and get things done, where the men are just coping with the emotions. I mean, that's just a generalization. Men can go through the same thing, but it is extremely emotional, this whole process, and stressful. And I think it's also helpful for people to understand the divorce process and really find out, like, from their attorneys, and have good communication, because the uncertainty, the fear, a lot of times people will respond because they're fearful of the unknown.
Yeah, and don't solve those unknown questions with Google. Or Facebook groups. I've seen many people post questions in those, and just all wrong answers are being proposed there. So get it from the right spot as well. But you touched on an interesting point that I do see a lot. I mean, the statistics show us that women initiate divorce the most. If they have a college education, they're the initiator over 70% of the time. So it's definitely not 100. But a lot of scenarios do see where the woman has gone through all these stages, is at stage 5, is like, I've accepted this, I think divorce is where we need to be, so let's get this going. And then their spouse is starting at stage 1, and you have this legal process, and you got people at 2 different spots.
For sure. And, people will go through an emotional divorce like 3 years ahead of time. It takes a lot of strength and courage to decide to go through a divorce. It's not easy. It's a huge financial decision. It definitely impacts the family,
Yeah.
impacts everyone. And so, like you were saying, the responder kind of feels blindsided, or they go in that denial. I've had couples in couples therapy where they told their spouse they want to get divorced, but the spouse acts like they're not getting divorced. They don't
Yeah.
change anything.
Yeah, it's very much like la 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 la. If I don't, receive this information, it's not happening.
Or what's interesting is some people will come to couples therapy to have the therapist tell the spouse that they're divorcing,
Yeah.
which is the therapist is not the one that should be telling the other
Yeah.
person.
That's not what you're there to see Stephanie about. But sometimes you're put in that position. And so after people accept, what's next?
Just accepting, just letting go of the resentment. Like we had talked about earlier, people will hold on to the anger.
Yeah.
And, there will be moments that will trigger the anger and different things, but you're kind of letting it go. It's for you to have peace, it's for your spouse to have peace, and for your kids. I want the listeners to really understand that you really need to feel your feelings before you make these decisions.
Yeah.
Having these emotions are good, talk about them, process them. And it's not just like a one-stop thing. You'll be doing that for a lot, but really feel your feelings. And then also realizing don't rush everything. Really be intentional about things. I think when people are having these negative feelings, they want them to stop. So they think, okay, let's get through this divorce and then I won't have these feelings. But then afterwards, you still have the feelings or even
And
more.
then you might have a legal problem because you did things improperly. I see that a lot where people are like, I need this done as soon as possible. This is miserable. And it's not really the process of the divorce. It's the emotional process, which filing the divorce, settling the divorce, getting the judge's signature actually doesn't change. And I often tell people, having these emotions are good because it means that you care.
Right. And
Yeah.
you're human. And, people think the divorce is the final when you get the signature. But I find the emotions really bubble up the most when the actual separation, moving out of the household, when things become really real and realizing, oh my goodness, I'm independent now. I have to be the one to take care of myself.
So I'm going to call it the Elsa stage, letting it go. Is that the end or is there more?
That's at the end, yeah, pretty much at the acceptance, moving forward, rebuilding yourself, rediscovering yourself, having support from the community if you go to a therapist, just really reflecting on how this can be a positive thing for your future, looking at the new beginnings and that you do have control over your future and making best choices when you are emotionally stable can help you for the best future for yourself and for your kids.
And it's okay to sort of bounce back into some of these earlier stages. If you have a bout of depression, you get really angry about something, that's normal as well. I think what you said is it's not linear. It's not one line and it goes in this order and you get to the end and then you're done. It's not a board game. And so do know it's a journey and it may have, some different stops along the way.
Yes, for sure.
And the best thing is to have a mental health professional. There's, somebody out there that can assist you. You can often meet with them online. Usually there's somebody in every community. They're well versed in divorce and helping people through this. And so definitely reach out to a professional to go through this. It's, what you touched on is it's the second most stressful thing that people can go through. So don't expect it not to be. Lean into it, get through it, but get help to help you do that. It's totally fine.
And you will get through this. It feels so overwhelming and so much now, but in 5-10 years, you'll look back and be like, wow, I got through one of the most stressful things in my life.
Yeah.
And be proud of yourself getting through that. Again, it's temporary. You go through it, even though it feels like it may be long and agonizing.
Yeah. So if you are wanting to learn more about this topic, you can head over to the Divorce Amicably website, and that is just divorceamicably.com. You will see this video. You will see more resources from Stephanie, and also she has written a lot of wonderful content for our book, Divorce Amicably, Your Roadmap to Resolution, which is available on Amazon. You can just type in that name and you will find us, and you can do a deeper dive into to this. Stephanie, if people are listening and they're in our area and they want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to reach out to you in your professional role?
In my professional role, go into my website, which I don't know if you want, it might be listed, and just sending me a text message that you would like to discuss, talk, if you want to set up an appointment or to consult.
And if you're listening to this as a podcast and you want that information, it's going to be in the show notes. And you can also look for Stephanie in the Amicable Divorce Network directory, which is the same on divorceamicably.com. Just look under Georgia Professionals and Mental Health and you will find her. You can reach out to her directly from there. Stephanie, thank you so much for this information and for all of the wonderful content with the book.
Thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.